So you're thinking about coming and living here in Cheyenne with us. You need to buy a home, and you're thinking about using your VA home loan benefit to accomplish that. Well, stick around here today. I'm going to share with you the pros and the cons of the VA home loan program. Hi there, I'm Stan Hartzheim with Double H Home Loans. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Wynot Wyoming. On this episode, we're going to share with you some of the pros and the cons of the VA home loan benefit so that you can make a good educated decision that's the best for you and for your family. So first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for your service. You know, if you're considering a VA home loan, there's a pretty good chance that you either served our country previously or you're currently serving. And here at Double H Home Loans, we get no greater pleasure than serving those of you that have served our country. So thank you for that. You know, if you're not a vet, chances are the VA loan isn't going to work for you, and this video probably doesn't apply to you. But good news, come back for future episodes where we talk about other types of loan programs such as FHA or conventional, even some of the outside of the box, what are called non-QM loans. We'd love to share that information with you folks, but for today, we're dedicating this to our veterans. The first thing you need to know about getting a VA loan is that it's really a great option, but it's not just great, hands down it's the best option for every veteran that's eligible. But if you're going to use it, you need to know everything there is to know about it. So I mentioned eligibility, and really eligibility is a question of entitlement. Now, I'm not talking about that kind of entitlement that our old timers make fun of our young timers for. You know, they always think they're entitled. I'm talking about your entitlement that you earned during your enlistment period. So we're going to start by giving you a couple of the top reasons why veterans would choose to use the VA loan. The first and hands down most popular reason why a vet would choose to use their VA home loan benefit is that it doesn't require a down payment in most cases. That's right. Depending on your level of entitlement, whether it's been used and restored, or even if you had a foreclosure and then have some of your entitlement tied up in that, you may qualify to use no down payment based on your entitlement or what's called your second tier bonus entitlement. And if you don't know what that means, reach out to me again in just a short conversation. I can explain what those options are. But many times you're going to be able to buy a home with no money down and leave a lot more cash right there in your own pocket. So now that we know that you're going to be able to buy a house quite possibly with no money down, let's talk about reason number 2 why the VA home loan is so popular with veterans. Even when you don't use a down payment, you have no mortgage insurance. So every month with other loan programs, if you don't have a 20% down payment, you're going to be paying mortgage insurance. But with a VA loan, even with no down payment, there's no mortgage insurance for the life of the loan. So you're going to be able to keep even more of that money still in your own pocket every month. Now, I would like to say, if you're using your VA loan for the second time or the third time, there's another part to it that we're going to discuss a little bit later that might dictate whether you want to use a down payment, but that's going to be your choice. And let's be honest, having a choice is powerful when you're shopping for a home. You want to leave all of the choices available to you as often as possible. So having no down payment and no mortgage insurance, keeping that money in your own pocket are obviously really great benefits, but there's a third benefit to the VA loan that I'd like to share with you, and that is the interest rate. When you compare a VA loan, say, to a conventional loan, on average, the rate would be 0.25% lower with a VA loan than a conventional loan. When you add that to the fact that you're not paying that mortgage insurance every month, you're going to actually qualify for a little bit higher loan amount than you would maybe with some of those other loan programs. One last thing I'd like to kind of touch on, VA loans are actually a little bit easier to qualify for quite often, and that's contrary to popular belief. There's a couple of myths out there we're going to talk about in a minute. There we go. We've listed off a bunch of different pros, and I think we've talked at length about how powerful the VA loan program is, but everything in the world isn't perfect. And so there are a couple of cons that I want to share with you too. The very first and most major con that I find with the VA home loan really is this stigma that's associated with it. I hate even having to talk about this, to be perfectly honest. I spend a lot of my time trying to debunk some myths that VA borrowers are less qualified or their file is going to be a little bit harder to close. I don't know. I think I might do another episode after this one called the VA Home Loan Mythbuster episode, just because there's so many different talking points there. The number one way that you can overcome some of these myths or that stigma is by working with a great lender. Certainly if you choose to work with a certified veteran mortgage advisor like myself, you're gonna have the right people in your corner. We're going to do a really good job of talking to all of the parties in the loan process or in the transaction. Yourself as the buyer, we want to make sure you're educated and that you know all of your options. Your agent, the seller and their agent, so that everybody understands how the VA program works, how well qualified you are as a borrower, and why they don't have to be so skeptical of accepting an offer that's using a VA home loan. The reality is, the VA borrower quite often is better qualified than their counterpart that might be a first-time home buyer using, say, an FHA loan. As you can see from the slide behind me, the VA borrower actually, this is a general rule of thumb, back in 2021 they did a survey. It was shown that they had more money in the bank, better credit scores, higher paying jobs, and ultimately closed on a higher level loan amount, which means they bought a slightly more expensive house. And lenders love the VA loan. They default rarely, 0.3% or something like that, compared to double digits with an FHA loan. So if you hear somebody say that the VA borrower is not qualified or lenders don't like them, that is absolutely a myth, and we're going to go ahead and debunk that myth right here and now. The other thing that you need to know about the VA loan program that I guess is a con is that the VA program is funded by its own borrowers, and it's funded in the form of a VA funding fee. So whenever a veteran uses that benefit, they're going to pay a VA funding fee up front. The other thing to know about the VA funding fee is it's on a sliding scale. So depending on whether this is the first time you've ever used your benefit or if it's a subsequent use, the funding fee could be higher or lower. And then within that, there's times where maybe you've had a VA loan before and then had a calamity in your life and had to foreclose on a home. That doesn't mean you can never use your VA benefit again. There's actually a second level entitlement called your bonus entitlement or tier 2 entitlement. Different people call it different things. It might require a small down payment, quite possibly not, but that funding fee is going to be dependent on kind of where you're at in that entitlement conversation that we had earlier. One other thing to note, and it will be listed on that same entitlement form that we would pull up, but you'll already know this for sure. If you have a service-related disability, you're funding fee exempt. You're not going to pay a funding fee whether it's your first time or your 10th time, whether you're buying a single family home or a duplex or a triplex. You're never going to pay that funding fee if you have a service-related disability listed on your certificate of eligibility. That's where we find that entitlement. I hope this video really gave you some good information about the pros and the cons of the VA home loan and how they can affect you and your situation. If you have additional questions, please reach out. You can email me, text me, you can even give me a phone call. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about eligibility, entitlement, funding fees, whether the VA program is even the right loan for you. Maybe you want to look at all of your options. I'm happy to show you as many options as possible. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so that you see all of our future videos. You know, we do talk about everything related to Cheyenne, not just home loans. But if you're interested in relocating here, I can absolutely help you with the home loan questions you have, and I also work with some of the best real estate agents, insurance agents, and whatever you need here in town. I can give you a good quality referral to help you with your relocation. I'm Stan, your mortgage man, and as always, if you have questions of how you can make Cheyenne your home, don't be afraid to hit me up. Ask any questions that you have. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Wynot Wyoming. And again, if you're a vet, thank you so much for your service.